That's what it takes to get elected to the president of the National Farm Bureau, is being somebody that's got that charisma.
South has all of those.
All right.
Yeah,
Right.
based on membership.
Right.
They go. So.
Well, I was glad to see that.
Yeah, we're good. I just trying to figure out.
Okay, great. All right. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to the 6th meeting of the Technical Working Group supporting the Farm and Forest Conservation Program Improvements Project. It has been a little while. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. So this meeting is being held in person and on Zoom to better accommodate everybody's busy schedule. So if you are participating online and you have any issues at all during the meeting, please contact Angela Williamson. Her contact information is in the agenda. Or you can drop her a message through the chat and she can help you navigate Zoom controls or address any sort of technical issues that you might be having joining or participating in the meeting. If you're in the room, there's some water back there. And participation in this conversation is limited to members of the technical working group. You know, if you would like to offer a comment, go ahead and raise your hands online or raise your hand in the room, and I'll do my best to make sure I call on folks. And for folks who are following along online, if you have comments or would like to forward opinions on the topic, please go ahead and email those to me at the email address that is listed on the project page. All right. So since it has been a little while, and for folks following along online, let's do a very quick round of introductions / roll call. So we'll start with the room, and then we'll go to folks who are participating online. So if I have not met you yet, I am Hillary Foote, and I am the Farm and Forest Land Use Specialist for GLCD. And also here is Angela Williamson.
I'm Angela Williamson, admin for this team, as well as several other things.
So she's been doing a great job supporting this effort. And also in the room, we have...
Hello, everyone. Jim Johnson, Land Use and Water Planning Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Agriculture.
And Mike.
Mike McCarthy, McCarthy Family Farm, Parkdale, Oregon. Long interest in land use, been working on land use in Oregon since 1980.
A very long time. So online, we have Commissioner Boyer.
Good morning, Barbara Boyer, and my role in this is to listen and to help Hillary report back to the commission members. And I just want to thank you all for your time and dedication. I've learned a lot through this process.
And Blair.
Hi, I'm Blair Batts, and I'm a staff attorney with 1000 Friends of Oregon.
And Christian.
Hi, Christian Richmond. I manage hazelnut orchards in Yamhill, Polk, and Clackamas County.
And Maitri.
Hi, my name's Maitri. I'm the senior rural planner with Washington County.
And Laurie.
Hi, I'm Lori. I'm with Landwash Lane County. We work to protect farm and forest land in Lane County.
And Ian.
Good morning, Ian Sisson, Senior Planner with Clatsop County.
And Gail.
Hi, Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director, Clatsop County.
And Nellie.
Hi, everyone. Nellie McAdams, Executive Director at Oregon Agricultural Trust.
And Jennifer.
Jennifer Hughes, Planning Director, Clackamas County.
And Dan.
Hello, Dan Hubner with the Oregon Department of Forestry. I'm a GIS analyst with a particular focus on tracking long-term land use change.
And Tamara.
Good morning, Tamara Mappett, Morrow County Planning Director.
And I think that is everybody for today. And we also have with us this morning to kick off the meeting, Director Bateman, who wanted to share a few words before we get started into the meat of our agenda today.
Thanks, Hillary. I'll just be a moment because I know you have a packed agenda. Good morning, everybody. I'm Brenda Bateman. I'm the Director of Department of Land Conservation and Development. As you wrap up your work, I just wanted to hop on and congratulate you and thank you all. I had a chance to read through the draft document earlier this week, and oh my gosh, it's huge. It's huge, and it's deep, and it's detailed, and it's thoughtful, and it's exactly what we need. And I just wanted to thank you for your very hard work. I know you put in some long hours and maybe a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears on this document. It's clearly a labor of love, and I just wanted to thank you all for that. So I'm going to stick around and listen a little bit more, but I just wanted to let you know that you've been heard and very much appreciated. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Bateman. And just to echo the sentiment of appreciation, I very much appreciate all of you and all the time that you've devoted to this project. It's been a lot of work. Just a little bit more that we'll ask of you before we sort of finalize the report that wraps up this process. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So just as a reminder, the intention of this effort that we've been engaging in over the past 4 months really has been to identify actions to improve the functioning of the farm and forest zoning-based conservation program in ways that are aligned with the existing policy intent of statewide planning goals 3 and goal 4. So essentially to capture in one place a variety of issues of concern with the goal in 3 and 4 regulatory frameworks that we've heard come up again time after time, across the state in a variety of forums. So we're gathering all of those, putting them in one place. And then to collect suggestions for how those issues could be addressed in ways that improve the clarity and consistency of implementation of the program, right? So over the years, the program really has attempted to strike a balance between clear and objective standards and allowing local jurisdictions flexibility to adjust the program to their particular needs. And, over time, as new uses are added to the program, as case law emerges, that balance can get a little bit out of whack. And so that really has emerged as one of the key focuses in this conversation is restriking that balance between clarity and flexibility. And lastly, the point of this effort has been to provide the agency with information that we need to really inform the creation of a work plan to address all of these identified issues in a thoughtful and organized way. So again, thank you for all of the work that you've done to contribute to that. All right, so today what I'm going to do is go over, generally speaking, the contents of the technical working group summary report that I sent out yesterday. Some folks have already read it. I'm super impressed. Huge kudos to those who have, but I certainly didn't expect this working group to have actually read that report by now. So what I'm going to do is go over, generally speaking, the contents of the report, and I'm going to ask you for any feedbacks, for comments on that report by December 15th. And then I'm going to go over a little bit what to expect for next steps in the coming months, and some key dates that are going to be coming up in December and in January. All right. So let's just start in on the summary report. And I'm hoping this to be like a less formal conversation. So if you have questions as we're going along, go ahead, raise your hand or jump on in. All right. So the summary report that was sent out yesterday is the culmination, of this work that we've been doing. And in that, I've organized into 4 sort of main areas. There's an introduction to the report that describes the events leading up to convening the technical working group in August. and, why we've kicked this off, the need to engage in an improvement program. It describes also the intent of the report, that we just went over, to document in one place the issues, ideas for addressing those issues. And also there's a big educational component to that report. So the report was written, hopefully in a way, that it can make these issues accessible to the general public and not just to planning practitioners that we all are. Then the second part of that report is a description of the process that we have all been engaged in over the past 5 months. So a description of the working group, how these meetings have been organized, how we've used the matrices as a tool to collect and organize feedback from the group. And there's also a description of how we've integrated comments from the public into the process. Okay. Then there's a third component to that report that is a little bit of history and education on the program, and then a discussion of some key concepts, again, with the aim of educating folks around the topics that we're discussing. So there's a bit about the history of the program, sub 1, sub 2 uses, sort of a description of cumulative impacts, what that is as a concept, and then a section on soils data and how that's been integrated into the program. And then lastly, the fourth section is the piece that I think everybody here is most concerned about. And that is the section that describes the issues that were identified by the technical working group and recommendations that have been made by the working group. And this is really the true substance of the report, right? So what we've attempted to do is describe all of the issues that were brought up by the working group in a clear way that's understandable to the general public. And then at the end of each of those sections describing the issue, we've essentially cut and pasted the recommendations that were in the matrix. There have been some wording changes there. But the good ideas that the group came up with should all be in that report at the end of those sort of descriptive narrative sections, okay? So just as an example, I will go ahead and share my screen and jump to page 19 of the report to show you how that's organized. So here you have the section on home occupations, which was a topic that was very important to the technical working group. All right, so there's a bit of discussion about the legislative history of that use. There's a description sort of how that use is defined today. And then a bit of a description of, sorry, we jumped a couple of pages there. Some of the issues related to the way that's been defined. Page 19. Then at the bottom of that section that describes home occupations, you will see a box that captures the recommendations that were made by the working group. And again, these should be verbatim with some wording changes, but essentially what was in that final matrix that we circulated on November 2nd. For some of these issues, there are sub-uses that are further defined. So in this example, we've also talked about lodging home occupations a little bit more in depth. We talked about the Clackamas case because this was identified as a particular concern to the working group. And you'll see under that particular section that the recommendations specific to lodging home occupations are included here. So So as you're reviewing the report, the feedback that I'm really interested in is in this narrative, if you feel like I've mischaracterized the issue from your perspective. And then if there is a recommendation that didn't make it in here for some reason, if it's not in here, then it was an oversight on my part. And please let me know. Okay. So before we go on to the ranking, the priority rankings that have been described, I want to talk really quickly about data and about case law. So the recommendations that were related to geographic data, to spatialized data, were all pulled out and put in the front of the report. So this is a topic that's of great concern to the agency. We actually have a meeting on that topic this afternoon. And so you see wherever an initiative, for example, related to material stability analysis or high value farmland was mentioned, that's all been put out into one section addressing geographic information system at the top of the report. The second thing that you'll notice in the report is that there's a section on this case law, codification of case law that we talked about early on. And the department is going forward, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later today. The department is moving forward with a request to initiate rulemaking, a simple rulemaking to codify those case law standards that we touched on. So that includes codification of 215-296 case law, the farm impacts test, the commercial activities in conjunction with farm use case law standards, the deep and needy cases that talk about the definitions of incidental and subordinate and necessary to support as they relate to agritourism and other commercial events. And then Division 12 and the agency's longstanding interpretation of the transportation uses listed in Division 12 as rural transportation uses, and the sort of agreement from the courts on that point from the Yamhilis West Sider Trail case. So in January, in addition to presenting this, we want to get the ball rolling and kick off a first rulemaking that will be focused on codification of those case law standards. So when I talk about the schedule a little bit later on, there's going to be some items related to that, and then items that are related to the broader, the rest of the issues that have been identified by the working group. Are there any questions on that right now? I want to make sure that it's clear that that is the first thing that we're moving forward with, but not the only thing necessarily. Oh, okay. So you'll see very first thing in the report is talking about those case law standards before all of the other issues are discussed. All right. So in that report, you will see priority rankings assigned to each of those recommendations. And this is how we came up with that. So members of the work group responded in a variety of different ways with priorities. Some folks ranked all of the issues on a scale of 1 to 10, and some folks provided, sort of lists of their priorities. And so what we did is identified issues and prioritized issues based on the number of work group members that had identified a particular issue as one of their top 10 priorities. So for those issues where more than like 7 members of the working group identified that particular issue as one of their top priorities, that item was given a rank of 2. For those issues where at least 5 members identified that particular issue as one of their top 10 priorities, that issue was given a 3 priority. So that ranking is based on the number of work group members that responded, identifying that issue as a particular issue of concern to them. Are there any questions about that or concerns with that ranking methodology? So we do have time to do it again.
I guess I would, oh, I'm sorry.
Mike?
As I understood you to say 7 members, it got a 2, and 5 members, it got a 3.
It's
Is that right?
described in detail in the report, but essentially the ranking is based on the number of members who identified that as a particular issue.
Okay.
When they responded. And so there are ranks of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 identified in the report. And a 1 means that more than 75% of the members responding identified it as a priority issue. A 2 is 65 to 75% of members who responded with rankings identified it as a priority issue. And so there are going to be unranked items that were identified as priority issues for some members, but maybe only 1 or 2 members. And so that is attempted to be explained in the report as well. Tamara, did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, I, full disclosure, have not had a chance to read it, and I will probably over the weekend. So if you said there is time to maybe adjust the ranking, I'd like to reserve that just in, I need to read it before I could say whether or not we need to redo that, because sometimes context, like you've just explained, really matters. So and I guess I'd also defer to everybody else if the majority of the committee think that the ranking is correct, or at least within the ballpark. That's a good idea. And I do appreciate that you didn't put our individual rankings out there, because some of us still work in a pretty political environment. Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, and I haven't read the entire report either, and I'm sure there'll be some rankings that I may not agree with. And what I wanted to state was we're going to still have our chance in front of the commission in January to disagree with this. The Department of Agriculture may think something's really, really important that's been brought down to the list, and we have some really strong reasonings why. I'm going to let the commission know that. And they may agree with me instead of the ranking, who knows? So I'm not saying that's, I'm just using that as an example. I haven't even read that part of it. I read the first part of the report. So, but I mean, bottom line, I just want to remind everybody, we'll still have our shot in front of the commission to make our point in terms of what we think should be, how it should be taken on, so.
Yeah. Got it. So any other questions on how we assign those rankings? And we've tried to be clear in the report that these are rankings of the technical working group and what they mean. Essentially, a 1 means that, more than 75% of the members who responded with rankings identified that as a high priority issue. And if it didn't receive a ranking, maybe only a couple of members identified it as a high priority issue. So there are 3 places in the report where the recommendations and those rankings appear. So 1 is integrated into the narrative of the report, so that as you're reading along, you read the issue that's been described and immediately see the proposed recommendations. The second place, and then there's 2 versions of the issues matrix in the appendix. So one of those issues matrix is organized by a ranking. So a reader can quickly go through and sort of identify the priority issues, which issues were priority for most of the members. And then there's a second version that goes through the recommendations by topic. So again, as it's sort of presented in the report, but just as a list, right? So that is how the recommendations were prioritized and presented in the report. So are there any questions about that and how that's been characterized?
I have a question, Hillary.
Mhm.
So it's not directly related to ranking, just at the beginning that you said, I'm just interested how you will present to the commission and the issues you've already talked about with staff, the data needs and how they're distinguished from the rulemaking in terms, because in my mind, they can happen simultaneously, right? They're very different processes. And I wanted to know how you were thinking about it and how you plan to present that to the commission.
There are a number of issues or a number of recommendations that aren't necessarily rulemaking, right? So you all identified sort of educational outreach efforts, guidance documents, rulemakings, legislative concepts, convening technical working groups, a variety of issues, right? And so the intention in January is that we are not going to bring a staff proposal at that time. We're presenting the information. And that the intention right now is to listen to public comments, to listen to feedback from the commission, and develop a work plan that we'll be taking back to commission in April. Okay. So I guess that's a good segue actually into the next steps to just clarify what's going on, okay? So to get the ball rolling, we are going to be requesting that the commission initiate a simple rulemaking, and that's going to be on those 4 case law codification topics. That rulemaking charge is going to our local officials advisory committee on next week. And that will be a separate agenda item for the commission in January. We'll be asking them to initiate that rulemaking and to convene a rulemaking advisory, or to authorize the director to appoint a rulemaking advisory committee. Then the intent would be to convene that rulemaking advisory committee in early March and to get that process started while we are still developing a work plan for other items that have been identified in the report. And again, there's going to be a variety of items that are on that list, not just rulemakings. So next week, we're going to the local officials advisory committee with that charge. On December 18th, there's going to be a special commission meeting. There are 2 agenda items right now for that meeting. The first one is not related to this process. The second one kind of is. Staff from ODA, Jim, and myself are going to be briefing the commission on key elements of the Farm and Forest program. This is an informational briefing. It's going to be an informal workshop almost. And we're not focusing on this project. We're not focusing on the improvements project. We are focusing on providing the commission with background, with the technical background that they need to understand the issues that have been raised by this group, so that they're ready for that agenda item in January. We're not going to be taking any public comments at the December 18th meeting. There is no decision for the commission at the December 18th meeting. This is going to be, an educational program essentially, because there is a lot. We've covered a lot of territory and there are a lot of concepts, involved in here. And for some of us, it's second nature. But for a lot of folks, it can verge into esoterica. So I think it's important that we do that. So it will be live streamed. You're welcome to follow along. It might be a great opportunity for planning staff to, you know, get more background on the program and some of these key topics as well. So that is going on December 18th to give folks a heads up. December 20th is the tentative internal date for having that report ready to publish. So again, if you have comments on the report, please get them to me by December 15th. And again, I'm particularly interested if you feel like I've mischaracterized a topic that we discussed, or if I left anything out that we discussed. On the 18th, I believe it's at 3 o'clock, but I need to double check because I'm not sure that agenda has been totally finalized. But I will let this group know when I have the final time for that presentation on the 18th. All right, so between the publishing of the report on December 20th and LCDC on January 26th, we'll be tracking public comments that are being received, written public comments, and compiling them so we can present that feedback to commission as well. So on January 26th, and again, I don't know the time, that is when LCD is meeting, and it is tentatively in North Bend. And again, I will send out the final time when we have that nailed down and the agenda item numbers to the work group for those 2 items. So the first one is going to be a presentation to the commission of the report. So again, why we did this process, how we did this process, and then what the result of the process was. That's what we're going to be essentially be presenting to LCDC on January 26th. There will be a large block of time for public comment on the 26th. So you can sign up for that. It'll be a couple of weeks though before that is available. And I will also let you guys know when public signups for public comment are available. And again, the second item on the 26th is going to be a request to initiate a simple rulemaking to codify case law standards and authorize the director to appoint a rules advisory committee that will be providing guidance on codification of those case law standards. So that would be like wordsmithing, and did we capture the intent of, you know, that standard? Okay. That RAC, the intention right now is to kick that off in March. And then also to go back to LCDC in April with a draft work plan based on more internal conversations and feedback we received from the public and from our commission. Does anybody have any questions on the proposed schedule for what is happening next? Mike, do you have any questions?
No.
No?
Good.
Okay.
Good.
For folks who are interested, the rule-making advisory committee, if we receive authorization to move forward with that, would be a solicitation for participation. And we will also let all of you know when that is published. So that is really all I had on my agenda for today. That went very quickly. Expected a few more questions. So does anybody have any questions about where we are right now? Next steps?
I do, I guess.
Yeah, Mike.
This is great plan.
Okay.
Moving into the codification of some of the case law, but how do you think we're going to be able to move to the next step and get into more of a meaty fix of some of these issues that we won't fix by the case law.
So, and I've noted in the report that for several of the case law items, that there's concern expressed by the work group that additional clarity is needed, particularly with commercial activities in conjunction with partners, right? And so, for meatier items, they would go on that work plan as additional rulemakings, most likely. And they would go into our policy option package as for future years as additional rulemakings. And there are also meatier topics that might go into that work plan, like convening a technical working group to talk about the material stability standard. That was identified as a very high priority item for a lot of the work group. And so there are actually several proposals that involve convening future technical working groups. And so those are items that we can do as well, without necessarily a request for initiation or approval for initiation from LCDC to get some work done.
Right, and obviously my concern is there's a lot of what I call erosion going on. That without fixes, there will be a lot of permitted uses in these vague areas before we get a fix, and that's very much a concern.
And my response to that is I've got a couple of those same concerns also, and I plan to let the commission know about that at the January meeting, that these things need to be taken care of sooner than later.
But I think the concern is if we codify the case law, you know, and I don't understand how the inner workings are of DLCD, but if we codify the case law, will it then be said that we fixed this and we'll move on?
That's a concern.
So again, I think there's an opportunity for public comments at LCDC and through, you know, this public comment period for the report, which will start, you know, on the 20th. And so if you would like to provide, you know, additional comments, sort of documenting your concern on the scope and the time frame of the work plan, those would be good venues to do that.
Hillary, could you, and following up on Mike's comment, could you kind of give us a glimpse of internally at the department? I mean, so if there are a number of us who there were say that there were ranked 2 criteria that a lot of people agreed on that we should try to get adopted. I mean, are we talking about a year? I mean, could it be possible that in April, if there were enough testimony and, you know, the technical working group were like, we really think that these rank 2 criteria are super important, that the commission can respond? I'm just not sure what world we're working in terms of, you know, work plans and kind of how fast things can happen.
And so I think that is an ongoing conversation, Blair. And I think that will be informed by future sort of conversations as well. I'm sorry, that's not a very satisfying response. I know that a lot of folks want to see the work plan right now, and that needs to be developed sort of within the context of DLCD's internal capabilities and funding as well.
And, you know, and in my experience with DLCD's policy work plan, is that sometimes it goes way out there and there's not priorities attached to things. And so regardless of where that ultimately goes, I think it's going to be really, really important. For example, with the commercial uses in conjunction with farm use, we don't do them as part of the case law. I'm going to be stating they need to be at the front of the line for anything in their policy work, because this has been identified as a really important issue. It's having a cumulative impact along with agritourism activities on agricultural land. We really need to get to this thing sooner than later. And that's what I'm going to do, Mike. And I think we need to do that to the commission. If it's not going to be part of this first rulemaking, it needs to be up at the front of the line. It can't be pushed back behind all the housing things that are going on. It can't be pushed back behind some, it's got to be up front. And I'm sure the agency, they do it all the time. I used to do it when I was here. You've got multiple rulemakings going on. You're not just doing one at a time. So.
Right. And we will have multiple rulemakings going on in 2024. Yeah.
I have another issue if somebody else is not. I don't see anybody with their hand up. I quickly read your report last night. I didn't see much in there on enforcement. I don't know even how to ask the question, but it seems important. It seems like it really occurs in two different ways. One is when the permits are issued, they're not issued in a way that follows the law. Firstly, and then secondly, they are issued with conditions and then the conditions are not met. So there's really those two areas, and they're rampant in our county, and they're really affecting farming and farmland prices and farm activity. And how do we put that in the process?
So that's a very important issue. So enforcement is a big topic of conversation, and coming from a county planning background, I had my fair share of enforcement requests, and they're difficult to deal with sometimes. So there are sort of 4 ways that DLCD can approach enforcement. So the first one is by suggesting adoption or enactment of conditions that improve enforceability, right? So for example, in the statutes that authorize guest ranches in Eastern Oregon, there's a requirement that the operator file an annual report with the county, documenting income as broken out in certain categories, related to the livestock operation, related to events, related to hospitality. So incorporating provisions like that have mechanics built into them that ease enforcement burdens on counties is one way of approaching the enforcement issue. The second way that DLCD gets involved with enforcement of actions by counties really is education. So making sure, trying to have good relationships with county planners so that questions come our way. There's a number of counties. A good part of my job is responding to requests from guidance from county planning staff on issues. So that's another way that we sort of approach enforcement, if you will, is providing education and guidance. Where that fails for whatever reason, then a third way is by participating in appeals. And that's more complicated because we need our commission's approval to appeal a land use decision. And we'd much rather, work with the county and their applicant before we get to that. But that is something that we do. And we actually have a number of appeals on our deck for a variety of issues right now. Not necessarily in the farm and forest realm, but in other areas. The last thing that DLCD does is that or anybody can request that we engage in enforcement proceedings against a jurisdiction for a pattern of decisions that are not aligned with our goals or goals. So those really are the avenues that are available to us around that topic that we've focused on. Right now, there have been some suggestions that we consider, strategically how we can support counties implementing their own enforcement programs. That is a much larger and more difficult topic. Yeah.
So on the first item you suggested, put in conditions to improve enforceability, and there's one that's already written into the law,
That's an
right, or the
example.
rules.
Yeah.
So how does LCDC immediately put those conditions in that improve enforceability in different areas?
Right. So one of the suggestions that we had in our matrix was to adopt rule standards to improve enforceability by requiring applicants submit evidence of compliance with income limitations, for example.
Right, but that would have to, that process to do that would have to occur in the second set of rulemaking.
It would be in rulemaking.
But it would not be in the first set to codify.
Unless you change the scope of that rulemaking in April.
Right, and of course, yeah, that's a concern because that's several years out before we would ever see that.
Did any of the planning folks want to say anything about enforcement or anything else on that topic?
I would just say that my experience is that if a matter, I think what I would just echo Hillary's comments that the staff, both historically and presently, use maybe errors in process or substance as educational moments, and very few things go to the commission. So, and when they do, there's usually a pretty good reason that they do.
Any other questions about the report, the rankings, process going forward? All right, this is the shortest meeting that we've had so far. All right. Well, then I would just like to, thank everybody. Really, this has been a lot of work. And these are a lot of complicated topics. We got through a lot of material in a very short amount of time. I know that a number of you will be continuing to participate with this process. Maybe by applying to be on the rules advisory committees and providing public input into development of the working plan that will come out of this. And so I look forward to your thoughts on that going forward into the future. So again, before December 15th, if you have comments on the report, please get those to me. And then I would also just offer, if you have thoughts on this process in general, any feedback, positive or negative, on how the working groups process was organized or run, the use of the matrices, etc., please let us know. That would be very helpful as we think about convening, more technical working groups in the future on some of the topics that were identified in the report. So I'd love your feedback on the process generally as well. Yes, Jim?
One piece of feedback that I wanted to say in front of the whole group, you mentioned how we got through a lot of work really fast, and there's not a council. It's in no short part because of the work you did, Hillary. I mean, this was a very structured, and I mean that in a great way, work plan that you had. You kept us to task. It made it easier for us to be focused. And, I've been involved in a lot of these over the years, and this is one of the best ones, and it's no in short part due to you. And to put this report out in the time that you have had done that is just amazing. So thank you for that. I mean, you're the reason we went through this so smoothly, so.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Definitely, yep.
Commissioner Boyer, did you have any sort of final comments or thoughts for the working group? Not to put you on the spot.
Thanks. No, like, this is a topic that I bring to the commission, and the other commission members aren't well versed in this particular program at DLCD. So I'm really excited to bring this information to the commission and kind of educate them so we can make these important decisions moving forward. So I want to echo Jim on your process. The structure you built, Hillary, really was smooth. So thank you.
All right, great. Thank you all. It has been a delight. So I think we'll close half an hour early. So everybody can have an extra long lunch.
Yeah, right. There's nothing else going on.
Or you can start reading the report. And appreciate everyone and your involvement. And with that, we'll bid you adieu for right now, and look forward to sort of checking in with folks on next steps. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.